flipped the script and broke the mold that was holding me back from taking flight. Now I'm doing okay, yeah. I'm doing
Welcome
all
and thanks for listening. This is Voices Amped. I'm Vanessa Becker-Weig.
And I'm Ellie Clark, and we are your hosts.
Today on the show, we are so excited to introduce you to Jeni Benavides. Woo, 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 woo. Welcome, Jeni.
Hi.
Hello. Jeni is originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. She attended the University of South Carolina, where she studied theater, focusing on performance. She went on to study at the University of Kentucky, where she received her MA in theater. Her master's thesis, Cultivating the Unassailable, analyzed the pedagogy and application of the Pacific Performance Project, also known as P3 East. She is trained with P3 in both South Carolina and most recently in Seattle. Jeni is a passionate storyteller and brought documentary theater work to the Girl Project for the high school program, as well as TGP's community event, Voices Heard. She is currently the training coordinator with the National Association for Public Defense. She's a rock climber, a teacher, mother to a very vocal cat, an advocate. She's a Taurus, which we all know. I love to know what people's signs are. The Taurus is an earth sign symbolized by the bull. She's known to attack you with hugs and snuggles while wearing adult onesies. What's the most recent adult onesie that didn't you just get a new adult onesie?
I have a flying squirrel one.
Yes, that's the best. Our team describes her as a diplomat, a shapeshifter, thoughtful, deep listener, curious, collaborative, small but mighty, millennial interpreter, balanced, attentive. The list goes on and on and on and on and on.
And on and on and on and on.
Did we miss anything?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Well, we're super excited to have you. Really, you're our first guest of the new year. So happy New Year to everyone. Jeni, what are you leaving back in 2020? What are you getting rid of? Saying goodbye.
I'm getting rid of the things that don't bring me joy. We're going to Marie Kondo this. Things that are unnecessary drama, unnecessary weight or stress. It's goodbye.
I feel you. I feel you on that. Yes. Goodbye. Good riddance 2020. What are you going into 2021 with? Like, what are you looking forward to in 2021?
Looking forward to, and I think keeping up with all of the positives that came out of 2020. I mean, for a lot of people, 2020 was a absolute shit show. Hard, difficult, beyond challenging. And in a lot of ways, 2020 was that for me. Alongside of it, though, there was a whole lot of making more intentional space for focusing on what are my goals, what do I want, and starting to pursue those things more actively. And slowly but surely over the course of 2020, it was cool seeing all of those things start to materialize and kind of happen. And so more of that in 2021, kind of taking that foundation and continuing to build on it.
Isn't that fascinating? I mean, I too feel so, I just have so much gratitude for being able to say at the end of 2020, but man, there's been some progress made in certain things. Do you have any of that, Ellie, with 2020, feeling like you made some progress?
Definitely. Just putting on the brakes is good for me because like I said, or like we've talked about, I know we just go, 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 go. And sometimes I don't give myself time to reflect on, am I doing what I want? Am I doing what's best for me? I just have the task and I'm really good at making that thing happen. But I never stop and say, do I want to be doing that thing? Is this what I want to be doing? Am I happy? And while it's been definitely a struggle, it's given a lot of space for daydreaming, thinking, spending a lot of time with good people on Zoom. Everything's a Zoom. Nobody calls anymore. It's like, we got to schedule a Zoom.
Yeah. It's nice to see faces,
I
though.
know.
And, with all of us working so closely together over the years, keeping that connection going at this time has just been it's meant so much to me, I know for sure. So speaking of that, Jeni, our work together, all of us and Margaret, with the Girl Project, you kind of you were kind of the last to come into the leadership team.
Mhm.
And what made you want to inquire about such things?
Well, the practical was I was in between jobs and I had a interim contract for a year at a university like an hour and a half from here. And I was like, this isn't going to work. I can't do this long term. But I know also, I think it had to have been around 2015, 2016. I was wanting to do more with my work as an artist, a teaching artist in Lexington. Had some good opportunities that I was learning from and growing from. But I wanted to do more of the work that fulfilled me as an artist, that was that I felt more of my own voice being contributed to the teaching, the work, the things like that. And to be part of projects that had significant sort of long range impact that they were trying to do. Yeah.
Well, we were so thrilled to gradually get to know you as you taught workshops and then just started to become part of the team. And one of the most wonderful gifts that you gave our work together was this documentary theater. So I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about documentary theater and kind of the work that you've done with it prior to the Girl Project, but then some of the work that you did with it during the Girl Project.
Yeah. So documentary theater was one of those gifts of my undergraduate career that I was really excited to learn and grow about, or learn and grow with at the time. And I didn't realize how impactful it was going to be for my career, like long term at the time when I was doing it. So I I first encountered it at USC with my mentor, who was teaching me a lot about the Federal Theater Project and kind of advising my thesis, which was a look at one of the theater productions that was part of the Federal Theater Project. And I think the wheels sort of started clicking together. So documentary theater, for listeners that don't know what it is essentially like a living newspaper. How it works is that you can take a modern issue that you can see in news articles or different interviews. You can conduct interviews with people who are experiencing those things, current events, and taking all of those factual pieces and parts and experiences and weaving it into a scene, a monologue, a full-scale play, something that basically creates an opportunity for that story to have a platform where it's understood more in depth. And so it sort of started there in a class, and I was a TA for a independent study class in documentary theater. We did a project on perceptions of women in the South, because being in Columbia, South Carolina, you are in the thick of old Southern culture, debutantes, different just expectations of women. And there are also, fringe, like women who don't fit into those models. And so we sort of used the course for that to explore. And I noticed that any piece of work that I did after that kind of gravitated towards that of what is this person's story? What makes them unique? Yeah.
So what you did a couple of different pieces with us in the girl project and worked with our girls. Do you want to tell me a little bit about some of those pieces that we worked on, because they were just so inspiring.
Yeah, yeah. So the one that stands out a lot about the one with the girls, the first year was when we brought in the gosh, I cannot remember her name, but she was with Kentucky Refugee Ministries. She had grown up in the Congo and had come and interviewed with the girls. And it was really interesting. It was activism in action. So they heard the story. And then because the group at the time was a group of mostly Caucasian teenagers, um, we sort of had to look at who is this group. I think we had two students of color in the group, one black, and so figuring out like how do we tell this story with integrity. It was a multi-layered process. That's what I'm trying to say. So we are learning about this woman's experience, who not born in the US, hasn't experienced traumas and hardship far beyond I think what most of us have experienced. And then figuring out, okay, we've given space to hear her story. How do we tell this story ethically, with integrity that preserves and honors her and her experiences, but also is mindful and conscientious of the group of artists that we were working with. The next year, I think it was a little bit easier for them to come up with that devising process, because we interviewed the representative from the University of Kentucky Police Department, talking about why she works in self-defense, and a lot of the stories that the girls brought to the table. The documentary theater was explored more within that group of students that year. So it's been interesting seeing, and just learning for myself as an artist, the honor and the place that you have to hold when you're representing someone else. And then also how that process changes up when the stories are coming from a more sort of internal source. How do you tell all of those stories well?
What and maybe it's some of those moments with documentary theater, but what are there other with that specific work, or are there other moments in our work together with the Girl Project Next Generation, Voices Heard, are like your favorite? Do you have anything you can pinpoint that you're like, yes, this is a moment that I will cherish from that time?
Yeah, yeah. The very first, like before I was doing documentary theater with the girls, I did the documentary theater piece for uh, the very first Voices Heard. And for listeners who don't know, some of you might, we had partnered with Greenhouse 17, and getting the opportunity to speak with a survivor about her story and about her background. It's been interesting because I think that interview has really sort of propelled my passion ever since. She paused like towards the end of the interview, after telling me all of the stuff that she's gone through, like just a nightmare experience. And she started apologizing for how many details she was layering into the story, and started to explain, when you've gone to trial and people have been, challenging what you've said and questioning every single detail about what has happened. She's like, I talk a lot sometimes. And I paused and I just explained to her, that we had talked a little bit about like what Voices Heard was, but saying, this is an event that is aimed at empowering women and aimed to bring awareness to what women like you have experienced. and to make audiences see it and care about it, and being able to see the relief that washed over her of like, I'm not being judged. This is a space where I am being just authentically heard for who I am, for what I've gone through. Um, for me, that's the thing that I always want to do. Like, I don't care what else happens with other stuff. I want to be part of the process of creating the piece that represents people who, might not otherwise have an opportunity to do a performance, to memorize a monologue, to get up and perform something. If we can be a small part of sharing those important stories with people who, maybe have never heard those before, I'm in.
I love that. That really is amplifying other voices, which is the whole purpose of our work. And for those ampers who don't know, Greenhouse 17 is a shelter for women who have been through abusive relationships, and they provide housing and work opportunities. It's really a wonderful organization that you should definitely check out. Um, so thinking about all of that work, and especially some of the people that you've had the opportunity to interview, and working with our girls and artists, how has that work changed you, and is there anything that you've learned from about yourself and in the work that we do?
Mhm. Um, I think that one of the things that I think has really come away from my work with the Girl Project is, one of the things that comes to mind is feel your feelings, that, having these brave spaces to feel your feelings in all of their capacities, that the complexity of one person's experience and the complexity of another's can coexist in the same place. Going back to the Greenhouse 17 piece, that year we had a partner piece that was talking about, so we had one from a survivor and then one from a male staff member. And he was sort of talking about, like, this is how we get to a place of domestic violence by this emphasis that our society has on gender roles. I wouldn't say that I think I have learned more what deep listening is, because I wouldn't say that I was necessarily a person who was dismissive of what other people bring to the table, what they have experienced, how they feel about things. But I think because theater, like working in theater and just being a human in our day and age, it's so go, 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 go. Do this, focus on product and product and product. And time with the Girl Project has really just, I think, broken down all of those like fast habits of mine and saturate more in process, whether that's of your feelings or of listening to somebody else. And it's shown me, I think it's kind of reconnected me with a love that I have of all of that I love knowing people's stories and hearing them and understanding them, and giving space for that.
So here you have had this wonderful advocacy work, and you're a theater artist and an educator. And now you have this new, I'm fascinated by this new work that you're doing with NAPD.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like you've been able to kind of incorporate, theatrical woman of many talents and advocacy work into this new job?
Yeah. So NAPD, it's kind of a perfect circumstance in that the role of a training coordinator is essentially a stage manager for the programming that we do. So we offer like live, well, at some point soon, again, we will offer live conferences. For now, we've been doing virtual ones and offering training and courses for public defenders across the country. And I think, so one, like working in that has been kind of secondhand for all of the work I did in theater education. It's coordinating details, making sure people have the information they need for going from point A to point B, and making it easy, making it accessible, and making it just an overall positive experience for them.
A great strength of yours, I must
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
The advocacy work, though, that I am still humbled and thankful and excited by is like, seeing people who are on the front lines of advocacy work and working in the justice system, fighting for the rights of people who maybe don't have a voice otherwise or don't have an opportunity. So we're doing a conference called We the Defenders, Rise, Resist, Represent in March. And it's for public defenders all across the country. Public defenders, people who do investigations, people called sentence mitigation specialists, which we can talk about that a little bit later, because that's like documentary theater. And basically they take a sort of all encompassing, if you work in advocacy, you are part of the public defense world, essentially. And it's basically operating, or it's going to be held on the anniversary of the amendment that basically gave people the right to have a public defender. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. That's only been a thing since like 1963, which I didn't know.
I didn't either.
Yeah. And was kind of, when I found that out, I was like, oh,
60.
My dad was born in 1960. Okay. That's not actually been that long. And when you place it historically, I mean, it's right alongside the civil rights movement. And so seeing like the work that so many of these people are doing directly parallels into legislation that gets passed, and real impactful legal representation. So seeing the Girl Project is the activist and the awareness and the why of so many of these things, and then seeing like these are the people who are kind of on the front lines of making this actually happen on the books. It's really inspiring.
Wow.
That is inspiring. You have I think it's just a real joy to be taking some of the work that you are used to doing and then being able to adjust to new work. I love that. That's really inspiring to me. And I think that you have such a great, you're so consistent with just kind of what your needs are and what you want out of your work life. And I'm curious with your rock climbing.
5 pull-ups.
Hey!
Yes. It's been so fun to watch that journey with you. How has your adventures in rock climbing, let's call it, changed? Just how has it affected your life in general? Like, how do you use what the tools that you gain in your rock climbing adventures and transfer them to your life and your work?
Yeah. Probably one of the biggest things is the part of doing what scares you. Few things make you face that, like being on a boulder that is 10 feet up in the air and you have to decide, are you going to get your shit together and finish it? Or are you going to listen to your body and recognize, I don't have control over what's going to happen next. And by control, mental control. I'm not listening. I'm not aware of my surroundings. I'm kind of in this dangerous zone where I'm not able to process information as well. I'm going to come down so that when I'm in a better headspace, I can try it again.
Mm.
Or, if I've been working on this thing all day and I'm going to fucking finish it, it's either one of those that it regularly tests and tries for you. And then starting to see, like, when you get to a plateau. Right now, my husband and I have taken a little bit of a break from being in the gym or outside climbing because of COVID and holidays. But what that has created space for is this idea of more concentrated training. I'd kind of gotten to a plateau where I've been performing about at the same level, but certain things I've wanted to really refine and focus on more control of my movement, more strength in my hands, so that when, if I've gone for a hard move, I have more confidence that I'm actually going to be able to hold on to it while the rest of my body is figuring out what it's going to do. Um, Taking time and space to be really intentional with our training. So it's sort of this like multifaceted obsession for me.
Well, just watching your strength grow and watching your body change in some of the pictures where you're doing pull-ups on your door and seeing your back and the sheer muscle that you've built up. It reminds me of the Girl Project work with the police department when the officer was inviting the girls to punch and throw a punch and feel impact. And I think all four of us, you, me, Margaret, Vanessa, were floored how impossible it was for our girls to assert strength, um, and find it in their body to just throw a punch and see what it felt like. And I know punching is very different than rock climbing, but you are in your own way claiming strength for yourself, and you are literally growing stronger and mentally.
Yeah.
And then two, I remember you talking about, and maybe you can share about this, in your rock climbing, you learned that you were under reaching for the target when you were climbing, and it resonated with me so much. And you were like, I think this resonates in my acting, and just the parallels you were drawing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So listeners, guess what? I'm a kinesthetic learner. Things that happen in my body teach me a lot about metaphors of different things that are going on. It's really interesting. I feel like my climbing partners and I have talked about this before, of like, climbing has this really unique way of being able to see someone's insecurities like directly manifesting in their body. In few places, because I think you have to, when you're approaching a problem, it requires both full commitment and concentration, but also a sense of ease. If you're holding on to too much tension and you stop breathing, you're going to fall off. But at the same time, if you are not going for, the next hold with full intention, you're not going to get there. Sometimes it's a thing of, the hold is really far away, so you have to make sure you have enough momentum to go for it. Or sometimes you have to hold on to that sucker with everything you've got and get until you can get your feet where they need to be. And yeah, it's interesting. It shows you so much about, when do you get scared? When do you think, oh, I'm not going to make this, so I'm not going to try as hard? Or, when do you just decide, I'm going to fucking do this? I've been working on this, or I have been doing the things that I am supposed to do to be stronger, to be more fluid, to be more connected with this. I know that I can do it because I know the problem solving pieces that have come together on this. So let's just do the damn thing,
Hmm.
And the unique thing about rock climbing is that it doesn't matter what level you are at. You can be just starting out, or you can be some of these professionals. A lot of times it's going to be the same thing over and over, of like reminding yourself to apply body tension, reminding yourself to be that mindful and focused on where your body is in time and space, not anything that's going on over here or in your personal life or whatever, being here and now and figuring out, what do I need to get to the next spot? Cool, we're here, let's adjust. And now we're going to get to the next spot.
Acting.
I know. Don't think ahead. Don't overthink it. Have a general idea of where you're going, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly amazing how all of that translates to theater, life, rock climbing.
Yeah.
And with
I
all,
just think everyone should do it.
well, I mean, and even if it's not rock climbing, I mean, even just like, I've been trying so hard to do strength training and yoga, and the strength training specifically is a kind of a new journey for me. And I've just finally, it like clicked in, like, oh, this is truly a journey. This
Mhm.
is, you have to be consistent. You have to just try to be in the zone when you're doing it and thinking
Mhm.
about how your body is forming and shaping. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, that took me an awful long time to figure that out. So,
Absolutely.
so if you're thinking about this kind of like, being consistent and going on these journeys with rock climbing and translating that to life and theater, how in all of those things, how do you measure your successes and your failures?
Hmm. Hmm.
We
Good
don't
luck.
ask easy questions
Tell us a wise one.
Tell
here.
us. I think, hmm. I think probably one of the most liberating things that's come about through climbing is that failure is not the end.
Mm,
Um, if you are climbing to finish every single route that you ever start, you are in it for the wrong reason. You will not last. That's not the point. The and that probably, it was a lesson that took me a while to learn because I'm an only child and I'm a perfectionist. So
Wait, how does only child come into that?
it's like that thing that you sometimes share with like that those personalities share with like the oldest sibling type of, when you're the only one, all of the pressure is on you sometimes to,
Mm, mm.
get good grades, do all the things. You're the parent's guinea pig, so here we go.
Yeah.
And they don't have a younger sibling to be like, oh, we can go easier on them. They're fine. At least, comparing notes with my husband, who's the oldest of four. It might be different for youngers or middles. I don't know. There might be different perspectives on that, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like, oh no, I lost it. Can we go back? What was that?
So we were
Failure.
yeah, failures.
Yeah.
Successes and failures.
That's probably one of the most liberating things. Like, I'm a perfectionist, and for so long I've been afraid of getting it wrong. And in art, climbing, and life, like you got to get over that. You're never going to get it right 100% of the time. That doesn't mean that you just don't do it though. Instead, I look at success as, okay, today I tried something new. Maybe I tried a route that is out of my range, but I at least got the start. So the next time I come in, I work on getting to the second move. It's on the days that you can finish something, great. That's super exciting. But, sometimes I even look at success as being cool. I didn't get any further than I did the last time, but I made my way on this route consistently 3 times in a row. That means I know I can do it. So now I'm going to direct my attention to the next piece of the puzzle.
That's
Yeah.
so cool. The idea that at the point of failure in rock climbing, that's the point where you have to decide on navigation and negotiation and how you're going to get like it's the point at which you begin learning is the
Yeah.
point at which you're failing. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times they'll tell you, okay, so you can get the first three moves, but you're having problems on this. Skip the first three moves. Like, you can do the start, like, forget it, skip it. Or, if the start's too hard, okay, whatever, don't get shut down there. Go to the second move and see what you can piece together there. And have your goal eventually be sequencing it all together. But just because you can't start something doesn't mean that, like, I don't know, you're shut down or not worthy of working on it. Like, go ahead and try it, try what you can and see what you learn from and how you grow from it.
Mm.
That's really healthy thinking you got going there, Jeni. Really, really healthy thinking. Do you have anything in your life that is like a really big regret?
I think how much time I've spent previously being afraid of things.
Mm.
It's interesting talking to my parents. Have joked before about, like, my parents are very careful, conscientious people. My mom is a math teacher and my dad's an IT guy. They're wonderful, amazing people. They're also typically pretty safe people. The rock climbing thing, they're like, oh man. um, there's this story though of when I was itty bitty. And I mean, I don't know, I'm not a parent, so I imagine I probably would have been scared too if it was my only kid. But I was apparently in a, like, tube thing. My uncle has a boat and, like, he was taking the kids out on the lake and stuff like that. And I was just sitting there, like, hanging out, little kid. I have no idea how old I was, but my dad apparently, like, went up to the boat and was like, "You're going too fast, Wit." And his sister looked at my dad and was like, "Bob, it's in idle." Like, the boat's in idle. It's not even moving. Um,
Oh my God, that's funny.
and I love that. Like, I love that about my dad, that he's that, like, aware and,
Mm.
wanting to make sure that his daughter is safe and all that kind of stuff. But I can also see, like, if that's the perspective, the thought that I always struggle with is, like, wanting to be practical, but where do I shortchange myself with over practicality? And at what point do you take a risk and just go for it? So yeah, I think that pattern of thinking and that approach was hardwired for a long time. And I think, regret wise, I think that's something I wish I could have unpacked sooner about myself.
Mm.
So, but I mean, you talk about fear and overcoming those fears and not realizing, at an earlier date that you could overcome those fears, but certainly you still have fears to overcome. And what right now would you say is your deepest fear, and how do you strategize to overcome it?
Mhm, mhm. I think that there is still a fear of failure. It's something that, if you think about your sport, your leisure activity, or whatever, as, a bit of a therapy session. I mean, it's something that I'm continually looking myself in the mirror on, is like, um, how much am I letting fear play into this right now? A fear of failure and not uh, succeeding in terms of a commercial success, right? Of, like, finishing the route, or of, being the best version of me 2021. Like, give yourself some fucking grace, for we've just gone through a pandemic. Um, I think, this thing of wanting to be excellent and make sure that I've not, like, failed other people, you know, um, I think the expectations that sometimes get put on us as women, as professionals, things like that, it can be really hindering from being present and take away from that. And I think being present is the more important part
Mm.
than, what measure of success you have. I mean, hopefully you do have some, like, not just kind of wasting the opportunity or something like that, but not letting it sort of manifest or like build up to a point in your own mind that you end up shortchanging yourself of being here and now and the best, most open version of yourself you can be.
Mm.
Doesn't that remind you all directly of our work with the Girl Project in particular, where I'm just thinking as you're talking about how little control we have with our work. Like we put on a piece of paper with these participants, we are going to create a piece of theater. We have no idea what the story is. We have no idea your experiences. We have no idea what it's going to be. But all we can do in this very moment is be present with you.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever we produce is worthy because you're worthy. And just the bravery it takes to pursue someone's story, to be assured that we will have a story by the end of those 6 weeks is pretty brave. And just us working together to give the girls the space and the going to be okay. Even when the side, all 4 of us are like, oh gosh, and writing those scripts. And then we're always floored because, and maybe that is because, like what you're saying, Jeni, we are present and we have enough awareness to be in the moment that we will always achieve some level of success by bringing ourselves each moment to the fullest.
Doesn't mean that we're not scared shitless the entire time.
The entire time.
But
I think also, like, when we're present, that when we are really present with it and saying, okay, we're going to be here and now with what stories are we hearing, that informs so much of like, what do we continue to ask from them? Like, what things do we say, oh, that could be something, let's poke at that. Can you all talk to us more about this? Can we vamp off of this a little bit more and see what is that seed that just started prickling up from this moment, and going into it from there. It can be really surprising what ends up blooming from that.
Yeah.
sure. Do you think that people, you are coming across in this interview as a very centered person, which is wonderful. It is. It really, really is. And knowing you for a little while now, I think that you are grasping your strength, which is really exciting to see. Um, in general, though, do you think that people have uh, a correct perception of you as a person? And if they don't, what do you think they have wrong?
Hmm. Um, I think by and large, and I know we've kind of talked about this before a little bit, I think by and large, people's perception is mostly there, of like that. I guess my take on what someone would most likely say about me is, she's authentic, kind, energetic, different things like that. I think probably what people might not always see is the things that I do get, for lack of a better term, spicy about. That's something that I wait a little bit before I let someone in to seeing like, what does anger, frustration, outrage at injustice look like in me. That can be something that I think I don't know that it necessarily like takes people off guard, but I think that it's something that, at least like in my, particularly like growing up and in my early 20s, I don't think that I really let myself feel like those more, I'm not even going to say negative emotions, because they're valid and they're, important. They're important as part of our experience in the world. But I think I was so concerned with, I guess, like the culture upbringing of like being polite and being diplomatic and doing all of these things, that I didn't necessarily give space for, okay, but when these emotions exist and they are completely valid, what does it look like, and how do you navigate that? How do you navigate that with, integrity? Like, not going to be a dick to somebody just for the sake of it, but what does something like standing up for yourself look like, standing up for somebody else? And what is that in like subtle capacities, and what is that in terms of when it's like, no, that's wrong, stop, period, the end. I think when I do get to those points, people are like, oh damn, because it doesn't come out very often.
Yeah, it makes me want to ask you something that I know we asked Margaret and Vanessa asked me, but we talked about fear and, some regrets and successes and failures. But what makes Jeni feel the most vulnerable
Vulnerable
of anything? Like,
mm-hmm. I think honestly, talking about my feelings on things that are anything basically like less than positive. If it's something that I've been wrestling with, if it's something that I'm like, I wouldn't say not as excited about. Like if I feel like if it's something that I'm like, I don't know. But if it's something that I feel anger over, if it's something that I feel like is going to cause conflict, that is like, nope. That can become a no-fly zone really fast for me. For whatever reason, I think we're still unpacking that a little bit. And it's something that I think that's something that as a person, I've been trying to work on. Those feelings aren't wrong. They're not wrong, both in the sense of just to feel them in myself, but also it's not wrong to express it, because one, somebody else in the room may feel the exact same way. Or two, it may be a thing of like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about it from this perspective before. Let's navigate through this. It's not necessarily going to be this like black and white response. Life is so much more grayscale.
So could you help our ampers out with some advice? And what's the greatest piece of advice that you have ever been given?
Mm-hmm. I've been given two, so I'm gonna say them.
Let's do it.
And they were both by acting teachers. One is it's much more interesting to survive. That was from my Shakespeare professor. I know.
like just start crying.
I know. He, was talking to, his name is Robert Richmond, and talking to a classroom of mostly female students. Probably one of the most empowering things in my early career as an artist is being in a room full of women and being told, instead of doing the approach to a Shakespearean monologue where the eyebrows are up to your ceiling and your voice is up here, connecting to your power and surviving, and not letting one of those, one of the Shakespearean monologues where she's lamenting something, that's not an excuse to downward spiral to death, within the monologue, and saying it is much more interesting to survive, to watch someone fight to overcome whatever that thing is. That has forever stuck with me. And the other, it's less of a like phrase, and it's more of a, I guess, an idea. I guess the phrasing for it for me is stand as tall as you are. And that's from my P3 Pacific Performance Project East teacher, Robin Hunt. And where I connect that to is this idea of the unassailable core that she talks a lot about, and she and her husband talk a lot about in their training. And it's this, there's an essential piece of every single person that cannot be touched and cannot be taken away per se, no matter what is going on. She has this story that she's used to describe it, talking about when she was doing, I think it was Clytemnestra with Tadashi Suzuki. So she's in Japan. She's been working on this show. Um, and they were doing this like kind of climactic scene like over and over and over and over again. And she said that, you know, in the middle of the rehearsal, like the rehearsal got stopped and the director just screamed at her essentially, like, why are you so good at my training, but so like not great at acting? And this is like being communicated to her through a translator. So he's shouting and the translator is saying it a little more quietly. So I can, and she talked about like feeling pressed against a wall, just with like, oh my God, I am exhausted. I have been doing this over and over. I don't know that I have anything else to give in this. And then realizing she did, that there's a piece of herself that it didn't matter what necessarily he was saying. I mean, she still had a job to do, but that did not diminish like her worth as a person. And so she said, you know, he said it, she collected herself, had a moment. And the way she describes it is, and I kept working. And so, yeah, this idea that you can have all of these things happening against you, and then, but when you have that thing, being able to tap into it and keep moving.
That's great. That's great advice.
Yeah.
I am reading a book that has been recommended by you and been passed on to me finally.
Yes!
That Jeni passed on to me as well, and I finished.
So I am starting said book by Glennon Doyle. What are you reading right now?
I am reading How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Oh, yes.
So good.
From X Kendi. Yes.
Yeah. So powerful.
And
So powerful.
what are you gaining some perspective from reading that, I'm sure?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like 100 pages in or so. One of the things that is standing out, or that stood out, especially on like the first day of reading it, was this idea of like calling an action, a person, something, like name it, racist isn't is not a bad thing. It's not the end of the world. That, well, I mean, yes, it's bad. Like, don't be racist. That's the goal, right? Of not be. But this idea that the powers and forces at play that want the world to stay more comfortable, right? Or essentially for values that are rooted in white supremacy to be staying in control. Essentially, there's this sensitivity to calling something racist to the point that, oh, can we say that? Can we say something's racist? That's going to hurt someone's feelings. We shouldn't say that. Like, no, you have to say it. You have to be able to say it in order to be able to break it down and to learn and grow and figure out how to be anti-racist. You know, anti-racist, it's a thing that can change. You can say something that is anti-racist, but then give yourself space to learn and grow and begin practicing as an anti-racist. Breaking down this idea that there's this idea that's gone around that like, to be called racist is like, you know, the end of your journey. It's like, no, it's not. It's just bringing to your attention something pretty important. You know, it's like if I were climbing without like proper safety equipment or something, be like, hey, you're messing up. Like, and being able to redirect from there. So
have you read what other books have you read on race? I mean, I'm reading right now, So You Want to Talk About Race. And I know a big suggested reading is White Fragility. And I think everybody in the world needs to hear something a particular way to learn it. So every book is valuable, just depending on who you are.
yeah.
Have you read other books besides that one? And I have certain books on race or inclusivity resonated with you more or less?
I know last year I read The New Jim Crow. And that was super powerful, going through historically, the history that they don't teach you in the US, or the history that's sort of glossed over of just how systemic all of this is. You know, One of the things I think, I don't know, I know this isn't necessarily like a resource on like anti-racist literature, but generally speaking, something I tried doing last year, one of my goals over 2020 was to read 36 books in a year. So that's like 3 books a month. And one of the things that I tried to maintain perspective on is that I was not reading a basically that I wasn't reading all like white authors, that I wasn't reading from authors that looked like me. Making sure that my reading list had a variety of authors who, didn't look like me. That there were, I read Baddest Bitch in the Room by the woman who worked with the Wu-Tang Clan. I cannot remember her. I can't remember her background. I know she is Asian. And then, reading Trevor Noah's memoir, reading Little Fires Everywhere, and the follow-up book to that, which is, or the predecessor, which is Everything I Never Told You. And it's the story of being Asian American in the United States. There's a lot of other things to it, but that definitely plays into the main character's experience. So I think it's also in terms of making conscious efforts to, for lack of a better term, decolonize our media, like whatever it is, making sure that what you're reading, you're really looking into that conscientiously. Media that you watch on TV, stuff, the people you follow on Instagram. If your media mostly looks like you, that's probably a good starting point of where to shake things up for yourself.
Jeni, what is your superpower?
I'm feeling like my superpower right now is like this like Zen honey badger vibe I have going.
You are. I'm like, are you a guru? Are you growing into a guru by the time you're 50? We're all going to be.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I've joked about like who climbers are sometimes, but it is sort of this balance of being, introspective and reflective enough about who you are and where you're at, but also having that like gumption and knowing when to take it out of your head and get it in your body and send all that energy out. Yeah.
Jeni for president. What's your campaign slogan?
Oh man, what is my campaign slogan? What's I gonna say? Hi, friend.
Hi, friend. That's perfect. Well, I mean, that would be really pretty much the polar opposite of what we've had for the last 4 years. So I think that
right.
Works. I think it works.
God forbid.
Hi, friend.
Hi, friend. You're all my friends, right? And you can all be friends. Like, it's possible.
Right.
It's
possible.
Let's be friends.
Let's be friends. Let's try that for a little while, shall we?
I'll make you gingerbread pigs.
We're going to move on to our campfire time. For our ampers, campfire is a moment for our guests to share inspiration with our listeners and us. The campfire represents storytelling in an intimate setting that is unique to the people who are present. In our activism work, we refer to this as the closed container or circling. So Jeni, what are you going to share today?
Can I go get it?
No, you have to have it memorized.
Well, good luck.
Go get it. Go get it.
Okay. So I'm going to read 2 quotes.
Great.
Ready.
I think we're good. I never stopped recording. So let's give like 4 seconds and then go ahead and start.
Cool. So, speaking of Untamed by Glennon Doyle, that will be a campfire selection today. It's a book I read last year on my quest to read 36 books, and I flew through it. And I think for me, the thing that was so exciting was just this idea of liberating yourself from expectations that others have on you. So, first one is because once we feel, know, and dare to imagine more for ourselves, we cannot unfeel, unknow, or unimagine. There is no going back. And there's a few others that I have. We forgot how to know when we learned how to please. Growing up in the South, that one is big for me anyway. That's sort of the culture sometimes for good and for things that you have to unpack later. And then this one was really good too. I am here to keep becoming truer, more beautiful versions of myself again and again forever. To be alive is to be in a perpetual state of revolution. Whether I like it or not, pain is the fuel of revolution. Everything I need to become the woman I'm meant to be next is inside my feelings of now. Life is alchemy, and emotions are the fire that turns me to gold. I will continue to become only if I resist extinguishing myself a million times a day. If I can sit in the fire of my own feelings, I will keep becoming.
Mm.
Also, we can do hard things, and you're the goddamn cheetah. For catchphrases you can carry always.
When she's talking about that cheetah in the beginning, achieving that task and how people celebrate it and how diminishing it is to the true nature of that animal, I was like, dang, man. And finding our wild. And Vanessa and I talked about that in my interview, just being a people pleaser. And it's not necessarily a bad thing if you have knowledge enough to be present in the fact that that is part of your nature, or if it's not part of your nature, it's something you learned along the way in this learning manners and politeness and pleasing. Are you okay, Vanessa?
I'm fine. I just I had blown out a candle and it got down in my throat. Sorry about that.
No.
That's okay.
So I am going to jump to, well, thank you for sharing from that book. I think a lot resonated with me in our work too, and reading the book, and you saying you have to read this next. And I had just read Uneducated, and that book shook me pretty deeply. So to jump to a very different style from a different female writer was exciting. And yeah, I couldn't help but in the moment compare the two books and the two stories and the level of struggle invited in and the level of no, K-N-O-W, not N-O, the level of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to hear what you think, Vanessa.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm very anxious to get through it.
So let's move to our rapid response portion.
Oh my gosh, just like those Vogue interviews. I love these.
I know. I'm such a little girl. I just get so excited for these questions. Okay. And don't feel like just because we refer to it as rapid response that you can't take a moment.
Okay.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Criminal Minds.
Oh, yes. Do you watch it over and over again?
And Scandal.
Oh, right. And Oreos.
Criminal Minds, Scandal, Oreos. Like, man, I don't know if that's like, undosed or undiagnosed anxiety that I'm needing to unpack. But these serial dramas, I can watch them over and over again.
Yep. What's your favorite sound?
What's my favorite I never don't get excited when I hear like AC/DC or Rage Against the Machine.
Nice. You're so badass. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? What would you choose?
I think flying.
Mm.
I want to go places faster.
And without pandemic germs.
Yes.
Yeah. If you were to have a disclaimer, what would it say?
Watch out. She says fuck a lot.
You might say, hi, friend.
Maybe that's actually the disclaimer. Like it's not even a disclaimer. It's hi, friend.
Or she wears flying squirrel outfits.
Sometimes wears onesies.
What do you want people to say about you when you're gone?
I think, I don't know. I think I want people to say I did the best I could with who I was and what I had.
God or no God?
I think, spiritual.
What would you be doing with your life right now if money were no issue?
Probably creating documentary theater work.
What is your theme song?
Man, there's so many. There's so many theme songs. I don't know that I've ever had a theme song. There's so many good ones, but I don't know that I have one.
Okay. Choose one. Rom-com, documentary, action, or thriller?
Ooh, I like thrillers. Those are fun. You know, for the documentary theater girl, I don't watch documentaries that much.
We were all supposed to say documentary, but we didn't.
Yeah, I guessed. Well, no, I've been guessing on all of them, and Jenny's was definitely thriller. I knew. Yes. I got one right. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for sharing some story time with us.
Yeah.
We are so grateful that you're part of our team, and you'll be hearing more from Jenny throughout our time with Voices Amped.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me. All right, everyone. Thanks for getting amped with us. If there are questions that we didn't ask that you want answered, be sure to send them our way. We are Voices Amped on Instagram and Facebook. I don't think we have a Twitter, but there's 2 other ways that you can get in contact with us, so we'll be good, right? Voices Amped is part of the arts initiative Voices Amplified. You can check us out on our website at www.voicesamplified.net. Our team is Ellie Clark, Vanessa Becker-Weig, me, Jeni Benavides, and Dr. Margaret McGladrey, with production assistance by alumni and intern Kennedy Johnson. This podcast is possible in part due to a generous grant from the Kentucky Foundation for Women. We want to thank Lauren Rourke for the badass podcast art, Tiffany DuPont Novak for our Fierce Voices Amplified logo, and Vanessa Davis for our beautiful _ I'm doing okay. You can check out her music at Songwriter Vanessa on Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week.
Voices Amped is generously sponsored by the Kentucky Foundation for Women. For more information about our guests, podcast content, or if you want to learn more about Voices Amplified, follow our advocacy work or support our 2021 Independence Campaign. You can visit our website voicesamplified.net or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. And remember, be curious, be courageous, take up space, and make some noise.